My mother refused to help with my kid in an emergency because she's not my servant, but had no problem playing Grandma of the Year for my sister. So I stopped paying her bills and watched the meltdown from my peaceful, drama-free house. Hey Reddit, I, Thelma, 33, female, have never posted anything like this before, but I've been holding this in for way too long. My mom, Diana, 56, female, has always lived in her own world, one where she's the victim, the queen, and the only one who matters. I spent years trying to be the good daughter, paid her bills, covered her groceries, stayed quiet while she treated my sister Melissa, 31, female, like the second coming, and acted like I was just there. The favoritism was blatant. But when I asked for one small favor during a really rough week, she shut me down in a way that flipped a switch I didn't even know I had. That one moment set off lawsuits, guilt trips, full-blown delusion, and even drama at my husband's job. But the real kicker, the ending, still makes people say, "Wait, you really did that?" You'll want to hear how this one plays out. So I'm not the kind of woman who asks for help. Not because I'm trying to prove anything, but because I've learned that asking my mom for something usually ends up worse than just handling it solo. She's one of those people who can make even the smallest favor feel like you just requested a kidney. But this one time, I didn't really have a choice. My husband David, 32, male, got hit hard with some nasty fever, not like a sniffle and tea situation. This was, we're admitting him for observation type stuff. His temperature was through the roof and the doctor didn't want to take chances. So he got checked in and I got handed Eli, our 5-year-old daughter, along with the sudden realization that I had zero backup. Our babysitter was out of town. David's side of the family lives too far away. Most of my close friends were either working or had their own kids to juggle. So after going through every possible option, I caved and called my mom, Diana. Now let me explain something about Diana. She lives in her own fantasy world where she's always the victim, always the one doing everything for everyone else, even if she's literally doing nothing. She's one of those people who can somehow twist reality to make it seem like she's the one being wronged, no matter what actually happened. Still, I figured maybe she'd help this once for her granddaughter for a few hours. Not exactly a tall order. "Hey, Mom," I started, already regretting it. "David's in the hospital. He came down with a bad fever, and I've got Eli with me. I just need someone to watch her for a couple hours while I run a few things and make sure he's okay." I'm expecting concern, maybe a hint of warmth. "What?" I get a sigh, the kind of sigh that lets you know she's about to say something unhelpful. "I'm not your babysitter, Thelma," she said, all cold and righteous. "I didn't sign up to raise your child." I swear I blinked like 3 times in disbelief. "No one's asking you to raise her, Mom. Just watch her for a little while. It's an emergency." "You always act like I have nothing better to do," she went on, ignoring the fact that she hasn't held a job in, a decade? "I'm tired of being treated like a servant." Mind you, I hadn't asked her for anything in years. Literally, but apparently asking her to spend time with her granddaughter while her son-in-law is in the hospital counts as some kind of moral offense. Then I hear something, a child's voice laughing in the background. "Wait, is that Max?" I ask. She hesitates, then answers like it's nothing. "Melissa needed me to take him today. She and Todd had some plans." So just to be clear, she was babysitting for my sister, who, by the way, lives 10 minutes away and is married with a husband who works from home. But they get help. Me? I get a guilt trip. "Okay, so let me get this straight," I said, already clenching my jaw. "You're watching Max right now, but you can't help with Eli because what? I'm not pitiful enough?" "Melissa is different," she said, like that explained anything. "She's trying her best. She has responsibilities, right? And I guess I just sit around in a hammock all day while money rains down from the sky." "You do realize I've been paying your rent for 3 years, right?" I said. "Bills, groceries, your phone, your, what was it? Digital photo frame subscription." "Don't throw that in my face, Thelma," she snapped. "That's what children do. They take care of their mothers." "And what do mothers do?" I shot back. "Because I thought helping each other out was part of this whole family thing." "I'm not your servant," she repeated. "You always act like I owe you something." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. I've been covering this woman's living expenses since I got promoted at work. I never asked for anything in return, not once. Meanwhile, Melissa's biggest accomplishment in the last 5 years was joining a yoga class. Then she drops the final blow. Melissa is my daughter. She needs me. Cool. So I'm just what? The debit card with legs? At that point, Eli tugged my sleeve. She was standing there watching me, confused, maybe a little scared. I looked at her and realized this argument wasn't just annoying. It was pathetic. I was begging someone who clearly didn't see me or my daughter as worth the effort. I ended the call without another word. I took Eli with me, handled it myself. David stayed in the hospital overnight. I brought Eli to the lobby, gave her snacks, let her watch videos on my phone while I talked to the nurses. It was chaos, yeah. But we made it work. And honestly, it felt better than being treated like a beggar in my own family. The thing is, it wasn't just about that day. It was everything building up to it. Years of being the responsible daughter. Years of being expected to carry the weight while Melissa got praised for breathing. I paid Diana's bills. I made sure she had food. And the one time I needed her, truly needed her, she made it crystal clear where I stood. That was the day something in me just shut off. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. I didn't even feel the urge to rant. There was no speech, no long conversation with David where I poured out everything. He was still in the hospital anyway, trying to fight off a fever that knocked him sideways. He had enough on his plate. So I kept things quiet, cold. I started making lists in my head. First list, all the crap I had done for my mom over the years. Rent, utilities, groceries, monthly extras that always had some vague explanation. One time she said she needed a deposit for medical things. And then I saw her flaunting a new phone case online with rhinestones shaped like a flamingo. I'm not even kidding. The second list, everything I'd ever gotten from her in return. Nothing. Not a thank you, not a warm meal, not even a framed picture of Eli. But you better believe Max's ugly macaroni art was front and center in her living room last time I visited. So, a few days passed. David came home weak, but better. Eli was fine, resilient like most kids. Life started getting back into rhythm. Then came the phone call. It was Sunday morning, right after I sat down with coffee and some peace for the first time all week. My phone buzzed. Mom, incoming call. I stared at it. My first instinct was to mute it and walk away. But a part of me wanted to hear what she'd say. Would she ask how David was doing? How Eli handled everything? I answered. Thelma, she said, skipping right past the greeting. You know it's almost the end of the month, right? Just straight into it like clockwork. I need you to send over the usual. Rent's due Wednesday, and I'm running low on groceries. I also need that refill for the card. For gas and laundry. I sat there in silence for a second, sipping my coffee, not even blinking. Yeah, that's not happening anymore, I said. Dead silence on the line. Then the voice changed. That fake sweetness that she tries when she senses something slipping. What do you mean? You're just stressed, sweetie. I understand. It's been a tough week. No, I'm serious, I said, calm and clear. I'm not sending you another dime. Not this month, not next month, not ever again. There was a pause. Then she laughed. Not a normal laugh. One of those annoyed, you must be joking kind of chuckles. Thelma, don't be ridiculous. I'm your mother. And I'm a wife and a mom and someone who's been bankrolling your lifestyle for 3 straight years while getting treated like garbage in return. She gasped like I just insulted the Pope. You think raising you was free? Do you know what I sacrificed for you? Oh, the greatest hits album was coming out now. I let her play it. You were a sick baby, Thelma. You cried all the time. I stayed up for nights. I gave up everything for you, and now you want to abandon me. You mean the same way you bailed on Eli when David was in the hospital? The same way you're sitting there playing Grandma of the Year for Melissa's kid while treating mine like an afterthought? Her tone dropped. Melissa's situation is different. You have a family. You have income, and I have bills, a mortgage, childcare. You think I'm just rolling in it? You said I make more than Melissa's husband. Cool. Let him pay your rent. Then came the yelling. You are being so ungrateful. I carried you inside me. I wiped your nose. I gave you life." "Yeah," I said. "And I repaid you with 3 years of direct deposits. That chapter's over." I could practically hear her pacing. I'd seen this routine before. The building rage, the manipulation, the switch flip from guilt to anger to full-blown drama. "You're going to regret this, Thelma. Mark my words. Melissa would never treat me this way." "Good. Then she can be the one to keep your lights on." She hung up. No dramatic exit, no tears, just a pissed-off slam of a phone call ending. I sat back, finished my coffee, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief, like stepping out of a stuffy room and finally catching fresh air. David came into the kitchen a few minutes later, wrapped in his robe, moving slowly, but looking better. He could tell by my face something had happened. "She called?" he asked. I nodded. "Wanted her monthly stipend." David raised an eyebrow. "And?" "I told her the Bank of Thelma is closed." He didn't say anything at first, just walked over, kissed me on the cheek, and grabbed a slice of toast. That was his way of saying finally. I didn't think that would be the end of it. With my mom, it's never that simple. But something had shifted. I wasn't the desperate-to-please daughter anymore. I wasn't going to get yelled into guilt trips or emotionally blackmailed by someone who made me feel like a walking debit card. I had a family now, a real one, a husband who appreciated me, a kid who thought I was a superhero for letting her eat a second dessert. That was the stuff that mattered. My mom, she could figure out how to pay her own bills. Maybe she and Melissa could start a GoFundMe for emotional damages. Either way, I was done playing the role of the forgotten daughter with the open wallet. I didn't make some grand speech about it. I just stopped quietly. No texts, no explanations, no dramatic send-off. I'd been holding my breath for years in that role, and suddenly I could breathe again. For a solid week, things were calm. David was home, still moving slow from the fever, but getting there. Eli was back to asking constant questions about sharks and making up stories about dragons that live in the bathtub. It was peaceful. A little messy, but peaceful. The kind of messy that makes sense. Then, of course, it couldn't last. Melissa texted me, short and dramatic. "Thelma, call me now. It's serious. Mom is in the hospital." And I just stared at it. Not going to lie, I didn't feel alarmed, just annoyed. According to her, our mother collapsed. Too much stress. Apparently being cut off from her monthly lifeline was just too much. Melissa said she took herself to the ER, drove herself, no ambulance, no unconscious episode, just a dizzy spell and a broken heart, I guess. Melissa started laying it on thick. Said our mom had been crying all night, saying she felt abandoned, like she'd been betrayed by her own daughter. That this, whatever this was all my fault. I didn't say much. I just let her keep talking. It was the same pattern as always. Turn a normal consequence into a moral crime. Make it emotional, make it dramatic, and above all, make it my fault. The weird part was how calm I felt. A few months ago, this would have made me feel sick with guilt, but now it just felt recycled. After I hung up, I did what any rational person would do. I called the hospital. No shame about it either. I wasn't about to panic over some staged fainting scene. Sure enough, the nurse confirmed she'd been in. Mild dehydration, released that morning, not admitted. No floor, no overnight stay, just a quick pit stop and some paperwork. I wasn't even surprised. Honestly, the only shocking part was how fast they played the hospital card. I figured I'd at least get a week of passive-aggressive silence first. I didn't respond to Melissa's follow-up text that said Mom was emotionally devastated, or the one that hinted I should come by and talk to her. I figured if she wanted to cry about betrayal, she could do it with the air conditioning and vending machines the hospital provided. David was the one who really helped me see it clearly. When I told him what happened, he wasn't shocked either. He just sort of shook his head and said, "You know, she's rewriting the story again, right?" And he was right. That's exactly what it was, a rewrite. Mom wasn't going to sit with the fact that she told me to get a babysitter while she babysat Max. She wasn't going to own up to anything, so instead she turned it into this Shakespearean tragedy where I was the villain and she was some noble mother discarded by an ungrateful daughter. I remembered so many moments over the years that looked just like this one. Birthdays where she skipped Eli's party because she was too tired, but then posted selfies at Melissa's house an hour later. Family dinners where she'd spend the whole time praising Melissa for trying so hard, while I got told I looked tired and should smile more. This wasn't a new behavior. It was just the first time I didn't respond the way she wanted. No guilt, no check, no visit, just silence. And it felt good. That weekend, Melissa kept sending updates I never asked for. Stuff like, Mom still hasn't eaten much and she's trying to stay strong. I didn't reply to any of it, not because I was being mean, but because I had nothing left to give. I spent that Saturday building a giant cardboard spaceship with Eli in the living room. She asked me if it could fly to Grandma's house. I said it couldn't. She asked why. I said the batteries only worked for people who actually wanted to see us. She laughed like it was a joke. I just smiled and handed her another marker. The guilt that used to live in my chest like some squatter's pet, gone, replaced by a quiet kind of peace. Sunday night, I got a notification from Facebook. Diana had posted some cryptic passive-aggressive status. Some people only love you when you're useful to them. But I forgive. I always forgive because that's what real mothers do. 32 likes, mostly from distant relatives and old church friends. I didn't engage. I didn't even roll my eyes. I just turned off notifications for her posts. It wasn't worth my time anymore. That's the part people don't tell you about setting boundaries. It's not just some angry fight or a dramatic moment. Sometimes it's just choosing silence, choosing not to respond. Choosing to build a cardboard spaceship instead of walking back into someone else's drama. The silence from Melissa and Diana held for about 3 days after that. Not a peep. I figured maybe they'd moved on to sulking in group chats or gossiping with the cousins who only remember I exist when someone's in the hospital or dead. But then came Thursday. David was back at work by then. Still not 100%, but stable. His job's pretty chill. Admin role at a clinic, front office stuff, phones, forms, scheduling, quiet space, clean, professional environment. You'd expect a certain level of decency from anyone who walks through the doors. Too bad decency isn't something Diana packs in her purse. I got a text from David around noon. Just 3 words. She's here. Unreal. Followed by a second. Don't come yet. The fact that he said yet was enough to make me throw on shoes and grab the keys. By the time I got there, David was already standing outside the building, calm, arms crossed, still in his scrubs, and just a few feet away, Diana was being escorted out by a security guard. Still muttering under her breath, still clutching that peeling gold purse like it was full of dignity she didn't earn. I pulled up, parked halfway over a line like a lunatic, and stepped out. David just pointed at the front doors. She showed up like it was a normal visit, smiled at the receptionist, asked to speak to me, said it was urgent. Diana wasn't subtle. She walked in there like she was the one doing David a favor, all warm voice and fake concern. People in the waiting room actually smiled at her. She always knew how to play friendly when she needed an audience. David continued explaining, and I just stood there trying not to grind my teeth. She waited until they were in the break room and no one else was around. Then it flipped. Totally unhinged. David didn't interrupt. He let her finish. She told him I ruined her. What? He asked. She said, and I quote, Thelma poisoned my heart. She's the reason I've turned against you. She's been brainwashing me since the day we got married. I couldn't even process it at first when David told me. It was such a load of psychotic nonsense that my brain needed a second to translate it. David wasn't even mad. He looked more tired than anything, just irritated. She had told him I robbed her of her motherhood, that I had been a good daughter until he got in the way. She even said I lured him in with pity because I knew he was too kind to leave a sick man alone. His jaw tightened. He told me later he had no clue what that even meant. He'd had the flu when we first met. That was her sick man story, apparently. Then she called me controlling. Said I kept him from helping her. Said I turned him into a cold, heartless husband. David said he was shaking his head, trying not to laugh. What did you say? I asked him. He shrugged. I told her this wasn't the 1800s and that I make my own choices. Then I told her to leave the clinic immediately or I'd call security. Apparently, that set Diana off. She started raising her voice, not full-on screaming, but enough for people in the hallway to hear. She started talking about how she'd sacrificed everything to raise me, how some women marry good men just to break them. One of the nurses stepped in, tried to calm her down. Diana turned on her too, called her a nosy brat. That's when the front desk called security. She left before they arrived, David told me. Stormed out, calling you a snake. A snake. That was a new one. David took a deep breath, looked at me like he was finally letting himself exhale. I didn't want to tell you right away, he said, but I knew she'd spin it her way somehow, so I figured I'd better get ahead of it. I nodded. Thanks for handling it. I didn't do anything special, he replied. I just didn't let her pull me into her insanity. I offered to drive him home. He insisted on finishing his shift. He wasn't going to let Diana ruin his day. Back at home, I kept thinking about the whole thing. How Diana had fully convinced herself that David was some evil mastermind, like I was just a brainless idiot following orders. It was laughable, but also sad, like watching someone self-destruct with the same fire they expect everyone else to put out for them. Around dinner time, David finally got home. He looked exhausted, but fine. We didn't talk much. Eli was too busy pretending her spaghetti was a monster. The next morning, Melissa sent me a text. It was long, full of passive digs. I heard Mom tried to visit David. She was trying to make peace. You two didn't have to embarrass her like that. Make peace. She went to David's workplace to rant about mind control. That's not peace. That's just delusion with lipstick on it. I didn't answer. Instead, I printed out a timeline of every deposit I had made to Diana over the last 3 years. I stored it in a folder. I added texts, voicemails, screenshots. I wasn't planning on doing anything with them just yet, but the way things were escalating, I figured it was better to be ready. David supported it. He didn't push me either way, but he said if she's this bold, she might try something worse. And he was right, because Diana wasn't done. She thought she could guilt me, fail, then drag David into it, fail again, and still keep pushing. And that told me something important. She wasn't just entitled, she was dangerous. And I wasn't going to let her anywhere near my husband or my kid again. After the stunt she pulled at David's work, I knew Diana wasn't just being dramatic. She was spiraling. It's like she couldn't handle not being in control of the narrative anymore. She was used to playing victim and being believed without question. That stopped working, and now she was looking for whatever scraps of leverage she could still grab onto. At this point, I had blocked her number. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I just didn't want to give her the option to reach me and blow up my day. Melissa tried to play the in-between, but I ignored most of her messages too. I didn't need a translator for delusion. That was the week the envelope showed up. No name on the front, just my address typed. Inside, a printed document with a court seal on it. Small claim summons. Diana was suing me for breach of verbal contract and emotional distress. I sat down with it at the kitchen table and read the thing twice, then a third time, just to make sure I wasn't missing a punchline. She actually wrote on paper that I had promised lifelong financial support, and that suddenly ending payments caused her significant harm, both emotional and economic. David walked in while I was holding the paper like it was radioactive. She finally did it, I said. She took it to court. David read it over. Didn't even flinch. Guess she wants to get laughed out of a courtroom now. Honestly, I wasn't even that stressed. Mostly annoyed, but I figured if she was taking it that far, I'd better be ready. So I pulled out that folder I started building after her work visit. It had everything. Bank transfers, timestamps, texts, even the screenshot of her flamingo phone case she posted the same week she claimed she couldn't afford groceries. I also included the call log showing how I asked her for one favor, watching Eli, and how she said no while actively babysitting Melissa's son. I even had the hospital statement showing her collapse was nothing more than mild dehydration with a vending machine visit. Court day came quick. It wasn't some dramatic trial like on TV. Just a basic small claims hearing in a dull room with folding chairs, and a judge who looked like he'd seen every kind of nonsense the city had to offer. Diana was already there when I walked in. Full black dress, hair curled like she was attending a funeral. She didn't look at me, just sat stiff with a folder of papers on her lap. I wasn't nervous. I didn't even bring a lawyer. Didn't need one. They called our names and we went up. When the judge gave her the floor, Diana launched right into it like she'd been rehearsing this speech in the mirror every night. She told the judge she was an abandoned elderly woman, that her only daughter had promised to support her indefinitely, and that my sudden refusal caused her to suffer. She pulled out highlighted bank statements showing the money I had sent her over the years, like it was proof of a binding agreement. The judge, to his credit, let her finish without a word. He just nodded occasionally, glanced at her paperwork, and waited until she sat down. Then it was my turn. I handed over my folder. I walked him through the timeline. How the payments were never part of a contract, verbal or written. How I supported her out of kindness, not obligation. How the money stopped only after she refused to help when my husband was hospitalized, and she was watching my nephew instead. The judge skimmed the papers, paused on the screenshot of her Facebook post where she was bragging about buying herself a little treat. The same week she told me she couldn't afford bread. Then he turned to Diana. "Ma'am, I see no indication that your daughter entered into any agreement to support you. It appears these were gifts, not payments, in exchange for services." Diana's jaw twitched, but she said, "She always said she would take care of me. She told me I could rely on her, and now she's decided not to." "That's not illegal," the judge replied. "There's no law that says an adult child must financially support a parent." She tried one more swing, claiming emotional distress, but the judge cut her off. "Ma'am, being upset by someone's personal decision is not grounds for a financial judgment." That was it. Dismissed. No further discussion. She just stood there like she'd been slapped in slow motion. She didn't say thank you, didn't even gather her papers. She walked out stiff like a mannequin on a bad day. I didn't follow her. I waited a few minutes, then left the courthouse through the side door. I wasn't in the mood for another meltdown or one of her lectures in the parking lot. Back home, David had already made lunch. Nothing fancy, just grilled cheese and tomato soup. I sat down and filled him in. "She tried to play the emotionally abandoned mother card," I said, dipping a sandwich. "Judge didn't buy it." David raised his glass of water like a toast. "To public records and paper trails." We laughed, not because it was funny, but because there was finally nothing left for her to twist. She had taken it to the end of the road and got shut down in front of a real authority figure. Someone who wasn't emotionally manipulated by tears or guilt. It felt final. There were no calls that evening. No texts, no follow-ups from Melissa, no cryptic Facebook posts or shared quotes about being wronged. Just quiet. And it was glorious. 2 weeks of peace. 2 whole weeks where I didn't have to deal with flying guilt trips or weird phone calls pretending to be emergencies. It was the longest stretch of silence I'd had since I stopped paying Diana's bills. I'd almost started to believe it was over. Then David got a text from one of his friends who lives near Melissa. "Pretty sure your mother-in-law just moved in with your sister. Saw her unloading bags with that leopard print purse." So there it was. Diana had officially landed at Melissa's place. And yeah, I saw it coming. Her ATM, aka me, stopped funding her rent, so she most probably got kicked out. And Melissa was always the favorite, always the one Diana claimed understood her. If anyone was going to take her in, it was her. What did surprise me was how fast it went downhill. By day 3, Melissa texted David saying her mom was adjusting, code for she's already making people miserable. By day 5, the updates changed. Less spin, more tension. Apparently, Diana had started her usual routine. Comments about how Todd, her husband, never helps enough. How Max should eat fewer processed snacks. How Melissa's laundry smelled cheap. It was always the same playbook. She'd show up, act like a saint for 48 hours, then slowly start turning into a live-in manager no one hired. Then day 6 hit. Todd gave Melissa an ultimatum. Either Diana goes or he does. And that's when Melissa showed her true colors. She didn't defend her mom. She didn't get emotional. She didn't try to compromise. No. She folded instantly, packed Diana's bags while she was taking a nap, and told her she had to go. David found out before I did. "Melissa kicked her out this morning," he said, handing me his phone. "Told Todd she wasn't going to risk her marriage over this mess." I sat down and laughed harder than I had in months. So, after all the favoritism, the blind loyalty, the pedestal Diana built for Melissa, she got kicked out like a bad roommate the minute things got uncomfortable. And not because Melissa grew a conscience or had some breakthrough. No, she just didn't want to lose her husband. She took Diana in to look like the good daughter. But when things got inconvenient, she flipped without hesitation. All self-preservation, no spine. David scrolled to the next text. She didn't even let her finish her coffee. Just dropped her off at a bus stop near the shopping center. Now that was brutal. Diana didn't call me. She didn't message. But I heard she tried calling some of my cousins that afternoon, asking if anyone had a spare couch. Nobody bit. Her meltdown at court had apparently made the rounds, and people were keeping their distance. I imagined the look on her face, sitting at that bus stop with her leopard print purse and nowhere to go. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because it was the first time in her life she had no one left to blame but herself. She gambled everything on Melissa's loyalty, and Melissa folded like a lawn chair. A few days later, I ran into Todd at a gas station. He looked free, like a man who'd just moved out of a haunted house. "Surprised you're still married," I said. He shook his head, barely. "I told her if she ever pulls that again, we're done for real." Then he said something that stuck with me. "Your mom doesn't know how to live anywhere without trying to run it. It's like the second she steps inside, she thinks she owns the place." I nodded. That's been her thing forever. He called me Thelma, dead serious, looked me in the eye and said I was acting just like her daughter, like it was an insult. I actually laughed. She'd been trying to use my name like a curse word lately. Didn't realize how much that backfires. He smiled, shook his head, and got back in his car. The next update came from someone on Facebook. A random acquaintance of Melissa's posted a vague status about watching someone kick out their own mother. No names, but it didn't take a genius to figure it out. Diana had officially become someone else's cautionary tale. Melissa didn't reach out. Not to apologize, not to vent, not to explain. I guess she figured I'd find out eventually, and she was right. I found out. I just didn't care. She wasn't some victim in this. She'd only helped Diana out of image and guilt. And when it cost her peace, she hit eject so fast it gave Diana whiplash. It wasn't noble, it was convenient. David summed it up perfectly. She wanted the credit of being the good daughter without the cost. Exactly. Diana probably saw it as betrayal. I guarantee she never imagined Melissa would be the one to throw her out. But that's what happens when you build your life on favoritism. Eventually, the golden child drops you too. By the end of the week, Diana had no place to stay, no money coming in, and no one in her corner. And the one person she'd always dismissed, me, was at home with a stable family, a peaceful house, and not a single ounce of guilt left. That didn't stop her from trying one more time. She showed up. I don't know how she got to my neighborhood. Bus, Uber, guilt-powered broomstick. Either way, there she was, sitting on the porch like a statue, arms crossed, face tight, and that purse with the peeling gold zipper sitting beside her like it was also exhausted. David saw her first. He tapped the window and said, "Your mother's out front." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. No yelling, no build-up, just me standing there while Diana looked up like she'd been waiting years for a moment like this. "Thelma," she said, voice worn and flat, "I have nowhere to go." I didn't respond. "I called everyone," she went on. "Melissa blocked my number. Todd won't take my calls. Your cousins pretend they don't see my messages." I still didn't respond. She stood up slowly. Her eyes scanned the front of the house like she was mentally appraising it, like maybe she was already imagining where her throw pillows would go. "I know I made mistakes," she said, "but I'm still your mother." I finally looked her in the eye. "You're not here for an apology. You're here because you ran out of options." She flinched. Not much, but enough to know she felt it. "I don't need much," she said, "just until I figure something out." "And what happens when something takes a year?" I asked. "Or 5? "It won't," she said quickly. "I just need time, a chance, somewhere safe." For a moment, the silence stretched. David was probably watching through the blinds. Eli was inside on the tablet. Life had finally become quiet, manageable, free. And here stood the woman who'd spent years stomping through my peace with entitlement like it was her birthright. Everything in me wanted to tell her to leave, but I didn't. I stepped aside. "1 week," I said. "No longer." Her eyebrows twitched like she didn't quite believe it. Truth be told, I didn't either. She nodded and picked up her bag. She walked in like she hadn't been kicked out of 3 homes and a courtroom in the span of a month, like she was just coming home from vacation. She smiled at David, who did not smile back. She waved at Eli, who ignored her. I didn't explain myself to David that night. I didn't need to. He knew exactly what this was. It wasn't mercy, it was containment. A final, slow-moving crash test that would prove once and for all who this woman really was. Not to me, I already knew, but to herself. Diana had spent her whole life seeing herself as the one who gave, the one who suffered, the one who deserved. She was about to spend a week watching everything she broke from the inside out. Melissa had already tossed her. Todd left without blinking. The cousins went radio silent, and now she was stuck living under the roof of the same daughter she humiliated, sued, and treated like a disposable wallet. For the first time, Diana had no audience left to perform for. No golden child, no backup plan, just the mirror. And yeah, I let her in because watching her squirm under that silence was worth every ounce of discomfort. The first 2 days, she was quiet. Too quiet. She acted like a guest at a hotel. She made her bed, washed her plate after dinner, even complimented the soup David made. It was so out of character it almost made me laugh. By day 3, the cracks started showing. Little comments slipped out about how Eli was spoiled because she got 2 bedtime stories, about how David should mow the lawn the right way, about how I looked tired, her favorite line. By day 4, she was back in full form. Complaints about the coffee brand I bought, passive-aggressive remarks about how Eli should eat less sugar. She even had the nerve to ask if I was planning to send her grocery shopping money while she stayed with us. I didn't answer. I didn't argue. I just looked at her and then walked away. By day 5, she was unraveling. Without Melissa to praise her, without cousins to vent to, without Facebook posts that landed sympathy, she was left with only us. And we didn't play along. David barely spoke to her. Eli ignored her completely, preferring her cardboard spaceships to forced hugs. And me, I gave her nothing. No fight, no guilt, no explanation. Just silence. On the 6th night, she tried one last time. She cornered me in the kitchen while David was putting Eli to bed. "You can't just shut me out like this," she said. "I'm your mother. I made you who you are." I looked her dead in the eye. "Exactly. And that's why I won't let you ruin the rest of my life." She froze, like she didn't expect me to say it out loud, like the thought had only lived in her head, never spoken into the air. She went to bed early that night. The 7th day, she packed her bag without being told. No fight, no drama, just quiet resignation. She didn't say goodbye to David. She didn't hug Eli. She didn't even look at me. She just walked out with that peeling gold purse slung over her shoulder, down the driveway and out of sight. For the first time in decades, I didn't wonder where she was going. I didn't worry if she'd land on her feet. I didn't feel guilty for not running after her. I just closed the door, sat down with David and Eli, and exhaled. The house was ours again. And this time I wasn't giving the key back.